The first sign that something was wrong on Threshold came through normal communication channels. Reports of a mysterious illness spreading through both human and Vracan populations. Then the reports stopped coming. Then the planet went dark. When Heejin's ship arrived at Threshold 3 days later, what they saw was terrifying. The orbital stations were abandoned. Ships floated dead in space, and on the planet below, cities that should have been bright with light were dim and flickering. "We're reading massive casualties," the ship's scanner operator reported. "Both species. Spreading fast," Admiral Hanolyi's voice crackled through the communication system. His fleet had arrived just hours before. "Dr. Kang, the Galactic Council is debating whether to quarantine the entire planet. Sterilize it from orbit to prevent the plague from spreading. How long do we have?" Heejin asked. "They're giving us 14 days to find a cure. After that, they burn the planet. 4 million humans and 2 million aliens dead. They say it's the only way to save the rest of the galaxy." Heejin looked at her assembled team. Dr. Nari Song, a brilliant xenobiology specialist who had joined after hearing about Heejin's work. Captain Shin and a squad of elite guard soldiers. Minho, still recovering but refusing to stay behind. And standing beside them were a dozen young Vracan warriors led by Keith, the cub she had saved years ago. They called themselves the Healer's Claws, warriors who fought to save lives instead of taking them. "We're going down," Heejin said. "All of us. The planet is under quarantine," one of Admiral Yi's officers protested. "Going down is certain death. Then we'll die trying to save 6 million people. Better than living while they burn." They landed in Threshold's capital city. The streets were empty except for the sick and the dying. Bodies lay where they had fallen. The hospitals were overwhelmed, running out of supplies, running out of hope. Heejin went straight to the largest hospital. The medical staff there were exhausted, many of them sick themselves. The head doctor, an older human woman, looked at Heejin with hollow eyes. "You're the famous doctor," she said without emotion. "The one who saves impossible cases. Well, here's your impossible case. A plague that kills both humans and Vracan. It has multiple stages, each worse than the last. It adapts to every treatment we try. We have 14 days before the orbital fleet burns this planet to ash. Save us or let us die in peace." Heejin examined patients through the night. The plague was horrible. It started with fever and pain. Then came respiratory failure. Then organ shutdown. And through it all, the victims were conscious, aware, suffering. But as she studied the disease, she began to see the pattern. "It's not one plague," she told her team. "It's two. One targets humans, one targets Vracan. But when both are present in the same environment, they synergize. They make each other stronger. That's why integrated colonies are hit hardest," Nari said, understanding. "This weapon was designed specifically to destroy places where our species live together, which means the cure needs to work for both species simultaneously." Heejin pulled up genetic data on her portable computer. "We need to find what humans and Vracan have in common. The fundamental biology that connects all carbon-based life. It was an impossible task. Humans and Vracan had evolved on different worlds with different chemistry, different systems. They were as different as two species could be. But Heejin had spent years studying alien biology. She had treated dozens of species. She had learned to see patterns that others missed. And deep in the genetic code, beneath all the differences, there were similarities. The basic building blocks of life. The way cells divided. The way DNA replicated. She worked for 4 days straight, combining everything she had learned. Human medical techniques, Vraca regeneration principles, knowledge from species across the galaxy. She was building something that had never existed, a universal vaccine platform. But it was theoretical, untested, possibly deadly. On day 7, the city's power grid failed. Half the hospitals went dark. More people died. The elite guard worked alongside the Healer's Claws, trying to maintain order, distributing what little medicine remained. Minho found Heejin in a makeshift laboratory, surrounded by screens and samples. "You haven't slept in 3 days? Can't sleep? Too many people dying. You can't save them if you collapse. Then I'll collapse after they're saved." She looked at him with bloodshot eyes. "I'm close, Minho. I think I have it. But testing it is dangerous. If I'm wrong, it could make the plague worse." "What do you need?" She hesitated. "A test subject. Someone willing to be infected with the plague and then take the vaccine. If it works, we can mass produce it. If it doesn't, then they die," Minho finished. "I'll do it." "No. You need someone, and I'm volunteering. I already almost lost you once. I'm not risking you again. Then who? He gestured around them. Every volunteer is already infected or needed to help the sick. You can't ask anyone else to do this. Hyejin stared at her computer screen, at the formula she had created, at the hope and terror it represented. Then she made a decision that changed everything. I'll do it myself, she said quietly. The room went silent. Nari, who had been working at another station, turned around. You can't be serious. I designed the vaccine. I understand the theory better than anyone. And I can monitor my own symptoms in real time, make adjustments if needed. Or you could die, Minho said flatly. What happens to everyone else then? Then you use what I learned to keep trying. But someone has to test this. We have 7 days left. We're out of time. Captain Shin entered the lab. Dr. Kang, Admiral Yi is asking for a progress report. The Galactic Council is getting impatient. Tell them I'll have an answer in 18 hours, Hyejin said. She pulled up a medical scanner. Tell them I'm running the final test now. Before anyone could stop her, she injected herself with a sample of the plague. Then she administered her vaccine. The next 18 hours were agony. Hyejin recorded everything, every symptom, every change in her body. The plague hit her fast. Fever spiked to dangerous levels. Her lungs began to fail. She felt her organs starting to shut down. But through it all, the vaccine was working. It was teaching her immune system to recognize the plague as a threat. Not just the human version, but the fundamental structure that both versions shared. Minho stayed beside her the entire time, monitoring her vital signs, ready to intervene if things went too wrong. Nari stood by with emergency equipment. Keth and the other Vrakan stood guard outside, refusing to let anyone disturb the healer. On the 16th hour, Hyejin's fever broke. On the 17th, her breathing stabilized. On the 18th, she sat up weak but alive. It works, she whispered. The vaccine works. The team erupted in cautious celebration. But there was no time to rest. They had to mass-produce the vaccine using every available medical facility on Threshold and the orbital stations. They had to distribute it to 6 million people, both human and Vrakan. Admiral Yi committed his entire fleet to the effort. Ships that were meant for war became mobile hospitals. Soldiers became medics. The elite guard coordinated distribution across the entire planet. The healer's claws worked alongside human medical teams, symbols of the cooperation the Syndicate had tried to destroy. Keth personally vaccinated thousands, working 20-hour days without complaint. It took 6 days to vaccinate the entire population. 6 days of desperate work while the Galactic Council watched and debated. 6 days while Hyejin barely slept, moving between hospitals, treating complications, saving lives one at a time. On the 13th day, the plague began to retreat. On the 14th day, the death rate dropped to 0. By the time the Galactic Council's deadline arrived, Threshold was saved. Nearly 300,000 had died. It was a terrible loss, but 5.7 million lived. Children would grow up. Families would rebuild. The integrated colony that proved humans and Vrakan could coexist would survive. Admiral Yi stood in the command center, looking at reports from across the planet. He turned to Hyejin, who sat exhausted in a chair, and said simply, "You did it. They're calling it the miracle of Threshold." Hyejin shook her head. It wasn't a miracle. It was medicine. It was science. It was people from different worlds working together. Still, Yi smiled. Miracle sounds better in the history books. That night, Hyejin stood on the hospital roof looking up at the stars. The fleet was beginning to depart. The crisis was over, but she felt only exhaustion and sadness for those who hadn't made it. Minho found her there. He had been released from medical care finally, still moving carefully but healing well. "You saved millions of people," he said softly. "You should be proud. I keep thinking about the 300,000 I couldn't save. That's what makes you a good doctor. You care about every single life." He stepped closer. "But you also need to let yourself feel success sometimes. What you did here will change the galaxy. Species are already talking about sharing medical knowledge. The Vrakan have established their first real medical corps based on your principles. You're literally changing how civilization approaches healing." She leaned against him, letting him support her weight. "I'm tired, Minho, so tired." "Then rest. You've earned it." But rest would have to wait. Captain Shin approached with urgent news. They had captured most of the Viridian Syndicate's leadership. Dr. Bora Choi was facing trial. And I don't know what to say. My work has always come first. Hyejin couldn't sleep. Something about the bioweapon bothered her. A nagging feeling she couldn't quite name. She sat in her temporary quarters on Sanctuary Station, reviewing the data again at 3 in the morning. The bioweapon was too sophisticated. It targeted human augmentation specifically, but it also incorporated alien biological components she had seen before. Components from species she had treated. The Vrakan parasite. Elements from diseases she had studied on a dozen different worlds. Someone was following her work. Learning from it. Weaponizing it. She pulled up her travel logs from the past 2 years. Every world she had visited. Every medical case she had consulted on. Then she started cross-referencing with reported data breaches at medical facilities. The pattern emerged slowly, but it was there. 6 different facilities across 3 star systems, all places she had visited or shared research with. All breached within weeks of her departure. No, she whispered. No, no, no! A knock at her door made her jump. Minho stood outside, already dressed and alert despite the early hour. Couldn't sleep either. Minho, look at this. She showed him the data. Someone has been stealing medical information from facilities I've worked with. They use that information to build the bioweapon. His expression hardened. You're saying someone has been tracking you specifically? For at least 2 years. They've been studying my methods, my research, everything I've learned from treating different species. She pulled up more files. And they're not done. This bioweapon was a test. They're building something bigger. Minho immediately activated his secure communication device. I'm calling this in to Earth security. We need to find out who's behind this. But before he could complete the transmission, alarms screamed throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. An automated voice announced, security breach. Hostile forces detected. All personnel to defensive positions. That was fast, Hyejin said grimly. Too fast. Minho grabbed her arm. Someone on this station knew we were getting close. We need to move now. They ran through corridors filled with soldiers rushing to battle stations. Explosions rocked the station. Whoever was attacking wasn't subtle about it. They reached the docking bay where the Serenity's Hope was moored, only to find armed mercenaries already there. Dr. Kang, one of them said, raising a weapon. You're coming with us. Minho stepped in front of her, his own weapon drawn. Not happening. The fight was brief and brutal. Minho was well trained, but there were 5 mercenaries. He took down 3 before taking a shot to the chest. He fell hard. Minho! Hyejin dropped beside him. His armor had absorbed some of the blast, but the wound was serious. Blood spread across his uniform. His breathing was shallow and rapid. The remaining mercenaries closed in. Then Captain Shin and a squad of elite guard soldiers burst through the opposite entrance. The firefight gave Hyejin the seconds she needed to drag Minho toward their ship. She got him aboard and into the medical bay, as more elite guard soldiers secured the docking area. But the ship wasn't safe yet. It was damaged, life support was failing, and they were still docked to a station under attack. And Minho was dying. Hyejin's hands moved automatically, cutting away his armor, exposing the wound. The shot had missed his heart but punctured a lung and damaged several major blood vessels. He needed surgery immediately, but the ship's medical bay was losing power. She had minimal equipment and no assistance. Stay with me, she told him, even though he was unconscious. I didn't let you protect me all this time just to lose you now. She worked in near darkness as the ship shuddered from nearby explosions. Emergency power gave her just enough light to see. She used techniques learned from human medicine and alien species she had studied. Vrakan regeneration principles to encourage faster clotting. Precision tools learned from treating a dozen different anatomies. Her hands were steady even as the ship rocked. She had done surgery in impossible conditions before. She would do it again. Outside the medical bay, Ambassador Yuna Park appeared with Captain Shin. Dr. Kang, we need to evacuate. The station is compromised. I'm in the middle of surgery. The ship is damaged. If we don't undock now, we're all dead. Hyejin looked at Minho's pale face, at the monitors showing his weakening vital signs, at her half-finished work. Every instinct screamed at her to stay, to finish, to save him properly. But Yuna was right. If they stayed, everyone died. Fine, undock. But I need power to the medical bay, whatever it takes. The ship separated from Sanctuary Station with emergency thrusters. The ride was rough, systems failing around them. Hyejin braced herself against the operating table, holding Minho steady, continuing the surgery even as the ship tumbled through space. It took 2 more hours to stabilize him. When she finally stepped back, exhausted and covered in blood, Minho was breathing easier. His heart rate was steady. He would live. Captain Shin found her in the observation deck staring out at the stars. Sanctuary Station was a burning wreck in the distance, surrounded by defense ships hunting for the attackers. "Your friend is going to make it," Shin said. "You saved his life. He took that shot protecting me. This is my fault." "No. This is the fault of whoever sent those mercenaries." Shin pulled up a data pad. "We've been investigating while you were in surgery. The attack wasn't random. They came specifically for you. They wanted to capture you alive. Why? Because you're the only one who understands how these bioweapons work. You're the only one who can stop them." He showed her intelligence reports. "We've identified the organization behind this. The Viridian Syndicate. They traffic in illegal weapons and technology. But there's a human element too. Someone inside Earth government has been helping them." Ambassador Yuna joined them, her expression grim. "We've made arrests. Dr. Bora Choi has been selling medical intelligence to the Syndicate for the past 6 months. She gave them access to your research, your methods, everything." Hyejin felt like she had been punched. "Bora, why?" "Jealousy, profit, maybe both." Yuna pulled up more data. "But she's just a small part of this. The real mastermind is someone who's been playing a much longer game." A face appeared on the screen. Envoy Taijin, the alien diplomat Hyejin had met briefly on Sanctuary Station. But now they had evidence. Financial records, communications, proof that Taijin wasn't a diplomat at all but a war profiteer who had been destabilizing galactic peace for profit. "He's been selling weapons to both sides of conflicts," Shin explained, "creating problems so he can profit from the solutions. And your medical breakthroughs were making peace more likely. Species learning to trust each other through shared medical knowledge. That was bad for his business. So he tried to weaponize my research instead," Hyejin said slowly. "Turn something meant to heal into something that kills. And he almost succeeded. But we spooked him. He'll go underground now, but we know who he is. We can hunt him." Hyejin looked at the intelligence files, at the conspiracy that had been growing around her work for years without her knowledge. She felt violated, used. Everything she had done to help people had been twisted into weapons. "There's more," Yuna said quietly. "The bioweapon that attacked the elite guard was just a test. We found evidence of a larger weapon, something designed to target an entire planet. Both humans and aliens living together. They want to prove that different species can't coexist." "Where?" "A colony world called Threshold. 4 million humans, 2 million Vraken, living in an integrated society. It's a symbol of cooperation between species. And it's about to become a target." Hyejin turned away from the window. Her exhaustion was gone, replaced by cold determination. "Then we need to get there first." "The weapon might already be deployed," Shin warned. "We might be too late. Then we save whoever we can. That's what we do." In the medical bay, Minho's eyes fluttered open. He was weak, barely conscious but alive. Hyejin sat beside him and took his hand. "Hey," he whispered. "Did we win?" "We survived. That's winning enough for today. I heard something about a plague world. Don't worry about it. Just rest. Not a chance." He squeezed her hand weakly. "Where you go, I go. Even if I have to. Crawl there." She smiled despite everything. "Stubborn man. Learned from a stubborn doctor." Outside, the stars waited. Somewhere in that vast darkness, a weapon was being deployed. A plague that could kill millions. A test to prove that humans and aliens should never live together. And Hyejin Kang, the doctor who saved impossible cases, was the only one who might be able to stop it. But this time, she wouldn't be working alone. The Vraken had heard about the threat to Threshold. They were sending ships. The elite guard was mobilizing. Species that had been enemies for centuries were coming together because one human doctor had shown them a different way. The hunter cubs called her healer. The elite guard called her a miracle worker. But right now she was something more. She was the symbol of cooperation between species, and that symbol was worth fighting for, even if the fight seemed impossible, even if the odds were terrible, even if people she cared about might die, because that's what doctors did. They fought death. They refused to give up. They saved lives even when the universe said those lives were already lost, and Hyejin had no intention of stopping now. The message came through military channels marked urgent and classified. Hyejin read it 3 times to make sure she understood correctly. 12 Earth elite guard soldiers were dying. Every other doctor had failed. She was being summoned to Sanctuary Station as a last resort. "This is different from what you've been doing," Minho said, reading over her shoulder. They were alone in her quarters on the Serenity's Hope. Over the past months, he had become more than just security. He was her friend, her protector, and if she was honest with herself, maybe something more. "These are human soldiers with military augmentations. This is Earth military business. Dying is dying," Hyejin said. "Species doesn't matter. Neither does politics. It always matters." Minho's expression was serious. "But I'm coming with you. No arguments." Sanctuary Station was a massive orbital platform where the best soldiers from different worlds trained together. It was neutral ground, a symbol of cooperation between species. But when Hyejin arrived, the atmosphere was tense. Captain Kyungho Shin met her at the docking bay. He was young for his rank, maybe 30, with the hard eyes of someone who had seen too much combat. His elite guard uniform was crisp and perfect, but his face was exhausted. "Dr. Kang, thank you for coming." He led her quickly through corridors filled with soldiers from a dozen different species. "We have 12 soldiers exposed to an unknown bioweapon during a classified mission. They started showing symptoms 8 days ago. We've tried everything. They have maybe 72 hours left." "What kind of symptoms?" "Seizures, organ failure, cognitive decline. The weapon seems to target their augmentations specifically, using the enhancement technology against them." They entered a sealed medical wing. Through observation windows, Hyejin could see 12 soldiers in isolation chambers. Some were unconscious, others thrashing against restraints. Monitors showed vital signs deteriorating in real time. Then she saw another doctor working at a computer terminal. Dr. Bora Choi turned around, and her expression was cold. "Hyejin," Bora said flatly. "Bora." Hyejin kept her voice neutral. They had gone to medical school together. Bora had been brilliant but competitive, always needing to prove she was the best. When Hyejin had gotten the deep space assignment instead of her, Bora had taken it personally. "I've been working on this for 6 days, Bora said. "I've tried every conventional approach. The bioweapon is too sophisticated. It adapts to each treatment." "Then we need an unconventional approach," Hyejin said, moving to examine the data. What she saw made her blood run cold. The bioweapon was unlike anything she had encountered. It was part synthetic, part biological, designed by someone who understood both human augmentation technology and multiple alien biology types. This wasn't random. This was engineered by experts. "Where did this come from?" Hyejin asked. Captain Shin hesitated. "That's classified. What matters is saving my people." Hyejin studied the data for hours. Bora watched her with barely concealed hostility, making occasional comments about how famous Hyejin had become. Minho stood nearby, silent but alert. Finally, Hyejin saw it. The pattern. "The bioweapon is treating them like machines," she said suddenly. "It's targeting the interface between their augmentations and their organic tissue. It sees them as technology, not living beings." "We know that," Bora said impatiently. "That's why standard medical treatment doesn't work." "So we changed their category." Hyejin pulled up new screens, her fingers flying over the controls. "We shut down the augmentations completely. Return them to baseline human biology. Treat the biological component of the weapon. Then reboot the augmentations with new safeguards that the weapon can't recognize." The room went silent. "That's insane," Bora said. "Their augmentations are integrated with their neural tissue. Shutting them down could leave them brain damaged. Or dead. Leaving them on will definitely kill them," Hyejin countered. "We have 72 hours. This is the only option." Captain Shin looked between the 2 doctors. "What's the success rate?" "Unknown," Hyejin admitted. "This has never been done before. But the alternative is certain death." "And you want to do this to all 12 simultaneously?" Bora's voice was sharp with disbelief. "If you do them one at a time, the bioweapon will adapt to your method before you finish." "Exactly why we do them all at once." Hyejin met Shin's eyes. "Captain, I need your authorization. And I need your trust." Shin studied her for a long moment. He had read the reports about the Vraken, about the impossible cases she had solved. But these were his soldiers. His responsibility. Do it, he said finally. Bora slammed her hand on the console. This is reckless. I'm going to file an official protest with Earth Medical Command. If these soldiers die, it's on your head, Hijin. It was always on my head, Hijin said quietly. That's what being a doctor means. The preparation took 8 hours. They had to create a shutdown protocol for 12 different augmentation systems, customized for each soldier. They had to prepare treatments for the biological component of the weapon. They had to have emergency revival equipment ready if everything went wrong. Minho found Hyejin in a quiet corner of the medical bay, staring at the 12 isolation chambers. You're sure about this? No, she admitted. But I'm sure doing nothing will kill them. Sometimes that's all you have. The choice between maybe and definitely. Then I'll be here, he said simply. Whatever happens. The procedure began at midnight station time. 12 soldiers in 12 chambers, all going offline at exactly the same moment. Hyejin coordinated the teams, moving between chambers, watching monitors, making constant adjustments. The first shutdown went smoothly. The second had complications, but they managed. By the 8th, Hyejin's hands were shaking from adrenaline and fear. By the 12th, she was running on pure determination. All 12 soldiers were now baseline human, their augmentations completely disabled. They looked more vulnerable than Hyejin had ever seen soldiers look. The bioweapon, confused by the sudden absence of its targets, began to break down. That's when she hit it with modified antibiotics and antiviral treatments, things that worked on organic tissue. The weapon fought back. It adapted. It tried to find new pathways. But Hyejin had studied alien biology for months now. She knew tricks that Earth doctors had never considered. She combined human medicine with techniques learned from the Fracken, from treatments she had developed for a dozen species. 6 hours into the procedure, 3 soldiers went into cardiac arrest. Hyejin ran between chambers, shocking hearts back to life, injecting emergency medications, refusing to let them die. 10 hours in, the bioweapon was 90% eliminated from all 12 soldiers. But they were still unconscious, still vulnerable. Now came the risky part, rebooting the augmentations. Bora stood at her station, pale and silent. She had been watching everything, unable to look away. If you bring them back online now, if even a trace of the weapon remains, it could kill them instantly. I know, Hyejin said. But we can't leave them like this forever. They need their augmentations. Those systems are part of their identity. She had modified the reboot protocols, changing digital signatures and system handshakes so that any remaining bioweapon elements wouldn't recognize the augmentations as valid targets. It was clever. It was desperate. It was the best she could do. The first soldier came online. His augmentations lit up on the monitors. His eyes opened. He was breathing on his own. How do you feel? Hyejin asked, leaning close. Like hell, the soldier croaked. But alive. I'm alive. One by one, the other 11 came back. Some faster than others, some with complications that needed treatment, but all of them came back. All 12 survived. Captain Shin stood in the observation room watching his soldiers wake up. His expression was unreadable. Then he turned to Hyejin. Dr. Kang, he said formally. Then he smiled. No, that's not right. You're not just a doctor anymore. You're a miracle worker. The elite guard soldiers, weak but conscious, began to hear what had happened. How the human doctor had saved them when everyone else said they were dead. How she had taken a risk that no one else would take. They voted unanimously to make her an honorary member of the elite guard. It was an honor almost never given to non-military personnel, but not everyone was celebrating. Bora Choi stood alone in her office, staring at screens full of data. She had been overshadowed again. The famous Hyejin Kang solving another impossible case. Her computer pinged with an incoming message. The sender was anonymous. The message was simple. We're interested in Dr. Kang's methods. There's profit in understanding how she works. Are you willing to help us? Payment will be substantial. Bora stared at the message for a long time. Her finger hovered over the delete button. But jealousy and ambition were powerful forces. She thought of Hyejin receiving all the glory, all the recognition, all the opportunities that should have been hers. She typed a single word. Yes. In the medical bay, Hyejin was finally resting in a chair beside the recovering soldiers. Minho brought her coffee and she smiled at him gratefully. You did it again, he said softly. Saved lives everyone said were lost. We did it, she corrected. None of this works without good people supporting the effort. Still. He hesitated, then continued. Hyejin, you know I care about you. More than just as a colleague. She looked up at him, tired but touched. I know Minho, I've known for a while. And? 3 months had passed since the incident with the Vraken ship. Hyejin's life had changed in ways she never expected. News of the human healer had spread through alien communication channels. She received messages from species she had never heard of, asking for help with medical problems their own doctors couldn't solve. But today's message was different. They're asking for you specifically, Commander Minho Bai said, reading from his tablet. He was the head of security on the Serenity's Hope, a quiet man with sharp eyes who took his job of protecting the crew very seriously. The Vraken, they say they have an impossible case. Hyejin looked up from her medical notes. Impossible? Their greatest warrior is dying. Some kind of parasite. They say no one who gets infected has ever survived. They've already planned his funeral. Minho paused. They want you to try anyway. Ambassador Yuna Park was not happy about the mission. She stood in the briefing room with her arms crossed, her expression tight with worry. Dr. Kang, you understand the diplomatic situation here? If you fail, if their greatest warrior dies under your care, it could destroy everything we've built with the Vraken. And if I don't try, Hyejin asked calmly, then he dies anyway and we're not responsible. I can't practice medicine like that, Ambassador. If there's a chance I can help, I have to take it. Yuna sighed deeply. You're incredibly stubborn, fine, but I'm coming with you. Someone needs to handle the politics when this goes wrong. The Vraken homeworld was called Vrakus Prime. It was a heavy-gravity planet, hot and dry, with red rock stretching to the horizon. The Vraken cities were built into mountainsides, carved from stone, designed for a warrior culture that valued strength above everything else. When their shuttle landed, Captain Thrall was waiting. The massive Vraken looked older than Hyejin remembered, more tired. Healer, you came, you asked, Hyejin said simply. Show me the patient. General Vorath lay in what the Vraken called a death chamber, a room where warriors went to die with honor. He was even larger than Thrall, covered in scars from countless battles. His scales had lost their shine, turned dull and gray. His breathing was labored and his yellow eyes were clouded with pain. How long has he been sick? Hyejin asked, scanning him with her medical equipment. 40 days, Thrall said. The parasite entered his body during a border conflict. We have seen it before. There is no cure. The parasite eats the brain slowly. First memory goes, then movement, then breathing. He has perhaps 10 days remaining. Hyejin pulled up the scans on her portable screen. What she saw made her stomach turn. The parasite was indeed in Vorath's brain, a complex organism that had spread thin tendrils throughout his neural tissue. But something else caught her attention. Thrall, tell me about Vraken immune response. When you're injured, how do you heal? Fast and strong. Our bodies fight hard. It is why we survive battle. Too hard, Hyejin muttered, studying the scans more closely. That's the problem. The parasite isn't killing him. You are. Everyone in the room turned to stare at her. Explain, Thrall demanded. The parasite is dangerous, yes, but your immune system is attacking it so aggressively that it's destroying brain tissue in the process. It's like burning down your house to kill a spider. The immune response is causing more damage than the parasite itself. Then what do? We cannot stop the body from fighting. Yes, we can. Hyejin pulled up more data on her screen, her mind racing through possibilities. We suppress the immune system temporarily while I use targeted treatments to kill the parasite. It's risky. Without his immune system, any infection could kill him. But it's the only chance. A Vraken physician stepped forward, his scales marked with medical symbols. You would deliberately weaken the general? That is madness. Weakness is death. Strength without wisdom is stupidity. Hyejin shot back. You've let thousands die from this parasite because you were too proud to consider that fighting harder isn't always the answer. The room went silent. No one spoke to a Vraken warrior that way, especially not a small human female. Thrall growled deep in his throat. Then surprisingly he laughed. The healer has fire. I like this. Vorath, what say you? The dying general lifted his head slightly. His voice was weak but clear. Let her try. I would rather die trying something new than die the same way as all the others. For the next 48 hours, Hyejin barely left Vorath's side. She set up a sterile medical bay, using equipment from her ship combined with Vraken technology. The first step was the hardest, injecting immune suppressants designed for humans but modified for Vraken biology. Minho stood guard outside the sealed medical bay. Vraken warriors gathered in the corridor, watching and waiting. Some looked hopeful. Others looked angry, convinced the human was defiling their general's honorable death. Inside, Hyejin worked with steady focus. The immune suppressants took effect within 6 hours. Vorath's inflammation decreased, his fever dropped. But now came the dangerous part. She had discovered something interesting about the parasite. It responded to certain sound frequencies. By studying its structure, she had modified a medical ultrasound device to target the parasite specifically while leaving brain tissue intact. The first treatment lasted 4 hours. Hyejin watched the monitors constantly, adjusting frequencies, making sure the parasite was dying without causing more damage. Vorath was unconscious, his 3 hearts beating in a slow, steady rhythm. By hour 24, half the parasite was dead. By hour 36, 3/4. But Vorath's condition was deteriorating in other ways. His body, unused to having a suppressed immune system, was struggling. His temperature is dropping, Hyejin said to herself, checking the readouts. He's going into shock. She worked frantically, warming him with thermal blankets, adjusting medications, keeping his hearts beating steady. This was the critical moment. If he died now, everything would be lost. Outside, Ambassador Yuna was handling an increasingly tense political situation. More Vraken had gathered. Some were calling for Hyejin to be removed from Vorath's chamber. Others wanted to honor the general's wish to try the new treatment. If the general dies, one Vraken commander growled, the human healer dies with him. Minho's hand moved to his weapon. You'll have to go through me first. Thrall stepped between them. No one touches the healer. This was Vorath's choice. We honor that choice. Inside the medical bay, Hyejin was losing hope. Vorath's vital signs were dropping. His breathing was shallow. The parasite was dead, but he might die anyway from the weakness of the treatment. Then she remembered something. Vraken healed fast and strong. What if she gave his immune system back, but carefully? A controlled restart instead of full suppression? She prepared an injection that would gradually restore immune function. It was a guess, a desperate hope based on incomplete knowledge. But it was all she had. The injection went into Vorath's primary heart. For 10 minutes, nothing changed. Then his temperature began to rise. His breathing deepened. His hearts beat stronger. By hour 48, Vorath opened his eyes. Healer, he rasped, his voice rough but clear. I am alive? Hyejin smiled, exhausted beyond measure. You're alive, General. The parasite is gone. You'll need months of recovery, but you're going to make it. When she opened the medical bay doors, a crowd of Vraken stood waiting. Thrall pushed forward, his eyes wide. The General? Alive, Hyejin said simply. The silence lasted only a moment. Then the Vraken erupted in a sound that was part roar, part celebration. Warriors banged weapons against shields. Some fell to their knees. Thrall approached Hyejin and knelt before her, his massive form bowing low. You have done the impossible, healer. You have saved our greatest warrior from certain death. The Vraken owe you a blood debt that cannot be measured. I don't want a debt, Hyejin said tiredly. I just want him to rest and recover properly. And I want your people to start rethinking how you approach medicine. Strength is good, but knowledge is better. Ambassador Yuna approached, looking both relieved and worried. Dr. Kang, you've made history today, but you've also made yourself very famous. That's going to bring complications. Minho stepped close to Hyejin, his voice low. She's right. Every species in the sector is going to hear about this. You'll have requests coming from everywhere. Hyejin looked at the celebrating Vraken, at General Vorath being carefully moved to a recovery chamber, at the hope and wonder in alien eyes that had never seen medicine like this before. Good, she said quietly. Maybe we can save a lot more lives then. But in the shadows of the Vraken capital, others were watching too. And not everyone was happy about a human changing the balance of power across the stars. The alarm screamed through the medical bay at 3 a.m. Dr. Hyejin Kang was already awake, stitching up a crew member who had slipped during maintenance. Her hands moved with practiced ease, the needle moving through skin like she was sewing fabric. She had done this 1,000 times before. Doc, we got a distress signal. The intercom crackled. Unknown origin. Captain wants your opinion. Hyejin tied off the last stitch and patted her patient's shoulder. You'll live. Stay off that leg for 2 days. She pulled off her gloves and headed to the bridge, her short black hair still messy from sleep. The bridge of the Serenity's Hope was dark except for the glow of screens. Captain Rodriguez stood with his arms crossed, staring at a blinking red dot on the navigation display. Dr. Kang, we picked up a distress call. Problem is, we don't recognize the language or the ship signature. Hyejin leaned closer to the screen. The signal was weak but constant. How far? 3 hours at full speed. But protocol says we don't approach unknown alien vessels without military escort. How long until escort arrives? 2 days minimum. Hyejin looked at the captain. People are dying right now. We don't have 2 days. Rodriguez sighed. He had worked with Hyejin for 3 years. He knew that look in her eyes. Fine, but we're going in cautious. Any sign of danger, we jump away immediately. 3 hours later, they found the alien ship. It was massive, at least twice the size of their medical frigate, with dark metal plating that looked like scales. Scorch marks covered the hull. Several sections were torn open, exposed to space. Life signs, Hyejin asked. 42? Maybe more. The readings are strange. Whatever they are, they're not human. They're injured, Hyejin said simply. Get me over there. The boarding team included Hyejin, 2 nurses, and 4 security officers. They wore environment suits and carried emergency medical kits. When they breached the alien ship's airlock, the first thing that hit them was the smell. Copper and something else, sharp and bitter. The corridor was wide enough to drive a truck through. Everything was built on a massive scale. Then they saw the first body. It was reptilian, easily 8 feet tall, even lying down. Its skin was covered in dark green scales. 3 wounds pierced its chest, and strange blue-purple blood pooled around it. The creature had 4 arms and a head shaped like a wedge. Dear God, one of the nurses whispered. Stay focused, Hyejin said. She knelt beside the body and checked for vital signs. Nothing. This one's gone. Keep moving. They found more bodies. Then they found the living. The alien ship's medical bay was a nightmare. Dozens of the creatures lay on the floor, bleeding, groaning. A few stood guard, holding weapons and watching the humans with yellow eyes that reflected light like a cat's. One stepped forward, massive and threatening. We're doctors, Hyejin said slowly, raising her empty hands. We're here to help. The alien made a sound like rocks grinding together. It did not lower its weapon. Then they heard a smaller sound. A cry, weak and desperate. Hyejin pushed past the guard before anyone could stop her. In the corner of the room, she found them. The cubs. They were smaller than the adults, maybe 4 feet tall, but built the same way. Scaled, 4-armed, reptilian. 12 of them lay in a pile, some moving weakly, others completely still. They were children, babies. Oh no, Hyejin breathed. She dropped to her knees beside the smallest one. It was bleeding from its side, the blue-purple blood soaking through makeshift bandages. Its breathing was shallow and fast. The large alien guard grabbed her shoulder with one massive hand and pulled her back. It growled something in its language. Hyejin spun around and slapped away the hand. These children are dying. Either help me save them or get out of my way. Perhaps it was the tone of her voice. Perhaps it was the fury in her eyes. The alien guard stepped back. Hyejin turned to her team. Set up here. I need lights, I need supplies, and I need them now. For the next 14 hours, Hyejin worked without stopping. The alien anatomy was different from anything she had studied, but the basics were the same. They had hearts. They had blood vessels. They had organs that could fail. The adult aliens watched in silence as the human doctor moved from cub to cub. She worked with tools designed for humans on bodies designed for something else entirely. She learned as she went. 3 hearts, not 1. Copper-based blood that clotted differently. A metabolism that ran hot and fast. The adult aliens had tried to treat the wounds with heat, cauterizing everything. It was brutal and often made things worse. Hyejin used precision instead. She cleaned wounds carefully. She stitched with tiny, exact movements. She created blood transfusions by mixing and matching between the cubs themselves, testing compatibility on the fly. 4 cubs died despite everything she did. Each death hit her like a physical blow. But 8 survived. The smallest one, the runt she had found first, opened its yellow eyes as she finished the final bandage. It looked at her with something like wonder. Its mouth moved, forming sounds it had heard the humans make. He-lur, it whispered. One of the adult aliens stepped forward. This one wore different armor than the others, marked with symbols. It looked at Hyejin for a long moment, then placed one massive hand over its chest in what might have been a salute. "You are healer," it said in rough, broken English. "You save cubs. You save honor." Hyejin sat back on her heels, exhausted beyond words. Her suit was covered in alien blood. Her hands were shaking from hours of precise work. But 8 cubs were breathing steadily now, sleeping peacefully for the first time since the attack. "I'm just a doctor," she said quietly. The alien made a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been something else. "No, you are more. I am Thrall, captain of this vessel. My people are Vraken. We are warriors. We fight, we die. But we do not save, not like this." Thrall knelt down, bringing his massive head level with Hyejin's. "You teach us shame. We let cubs die because we know only fighting. You teach us hope. You show us. Different way, more Vraken gathered around." They looked at Hyejin with expressions she couldn't quite read. Respect maybe, or fear, or something else entirely. The smallest cub, the one she had saved first, reached out with one small 4-fingered hand and touched Hyejin's arm. "Healer," it said again, clearer this time. "My healer." Hyejin felt tears burn in her eyes. She was too tired to stop them. She had come into space to explore, to learn, to help where she could. She never expected this. She never expected to find a species that needed help in ways they didn't even understand themselves. "What's your name?" she asked the cub softly. "Keth," the cub whispered. "Well, Keth, you're going to be fine now. You're going to grow up strong." Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through her suit radio. "Doc, we need to head back. You've been working for 14 hours straight." Hyejin looked around at the 8 sleeping cubs, at the adult Vraken standing guard with new respect in their eyes, at Captain Thrall, who had called her healer like it was a sacred title. "Yeah," she said softly. "I'm ready." But as she stood to leave, she knew something had changed. She had crossed a line tonight. She had made first contact with an alien species, not through diplomacy or trade or military power, but through medicine, through compassion, and the galaxy would never be quite the same.